Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Innu, and Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. On the panel with me today is Mr. Kent Seelan, is in the room, and joining via Zoom is Ms. Michelle Duncan. Our assessor today is Ms. Alyssa Adarkanova, and our administrative person is Ms. Phoebe Graywood. My name is Bill Moretsky. I am also on the panel and will be chairing this hearing. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application. We will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony, followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony, followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all of the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. We will be hearing items 4 and 7 on our docket today. Ms. Graywood, please affirm the assessor's and the applicant's testimony.
Ms. Adarkanova, can I get you to state your full name?
Alyssa Adarhanova.
Do you affirm the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Mr. McCubbin, please state your full name.
Howard Lindsay McCubbin.
Do you affirm the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay, our first item on the docket today is item number 4, file number 24-2942 Paget Street. This is an application for revision of the amount of the assessed value. Ms. Adarkanova, you may begin your presentation.
File number 24-2942, roll number 1000644780. This is Paget Street. The owner is Regala Villas Limited. Roll year is 2025 with a reference date of April 1st, 2023. The assessed value is $1,950,000. Classification residential 2, liability taxable. This is vacant residential high density land with an area of 105,218 square feet, and the zoning is RMFM. Continuing to page 2, we can see that there is a land influence of rail line and that the net rate per square foot is $18.53. On page 3, we have our land sales comparables. So comparable 1 is in the Waverly Heights neighborhood, and it has a land area of 105,445 square feet. It is multifamily zoned district, RMFS. It has influences such as bus route, bus stop, medium traffic, external corner, no sewer, no water, a rail line similar to the subject. Sale date here being April 12th, 2021, with a sale price per square foot of $27.88 per square foot. Comparable to is in the Lord Roberts neighborhood. All the comparables are vacant residential high density. And for comparable to, the land area is 98,337 square feet. Zoning is RMU. Land influence is internal corner and rail line being similar to the subject, with a sale date of July 10th, 2020, and a sale price per square foot of $26.44. Comparable 3 is within the Chevrier neighborhood. It has a land area of 100,217 square feet, RMU zoned, land influence of external corner, and a sale date being June 27th, 2018, with a sale price per square foot of $25.83. Comparable 4 is within the Tuxedo Industrial neighborhood. It has a land area of 140,925 square feet, zoned RMU, influence heavy traffic. The sale date is January 22nd, 2016, with the sale price per square foot being $19.54. Comparable 5 is within the Bridgewater Center neighborhood. It has a land area of 95,547 square feet, zoned RMFL, influenced by medium traffic, external corner, retention pond, and it has a date of sale of April 1st, 2014, so it's the most dated sale. And the sale price per square foot here is $15.39. Continuing to page 4, we can see aerial photos of the subject property. So we can see better on the second picture on the bottom half of the page that there is an access road that services this property. And on page 5, we can see that there is images of our comparables in aerial views. So comparable 1, comparable 2, can see the rail line on both comparable 1 and 2. And comparable 3 with Belantre Drive. Page 6 shows comparable 4 and 5 respectively. And then we have on page 7 and 8 our Municipal Assessment Act excerpts. So going back to page 2, I don't think that our net rate per square foot of $18.53 is unreasonable when looking at the comparables provided on page 3, considering that the comparables are not necessarily the newest sales, especially for 3, 4, and 5, and it seems to support our model assessment. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McCubbin, do you have any question on the assessor's presentation, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Darkinova, if I can get you to turn your attention to page 1 of your presentation, please. If you go to the bottom of the page, land areas, so it says the land area is 105,218 square feet, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And that's the actual size of the land. Is that?
Up to our knowledge, yes, that's what we have on record.
Okay, fair enough. If I can get you to turn to page 4 of your presentation, please.
Yep.
which shows the subject property, a bird's eye view or an aerial photograph of the subject property. Now, let's go to the 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 aerial photograph at the bottom of the page. You will see the subject property does have access from Paget Street. It's a rare lot, but it does have access from Paget Street, correct?
Correct.
Would you agree also that that access services the two bottom properties that are already developed with buildings, and it also services the property above it and the subject property? So it's servicing the quad there, the four properties in that area. Would you agree with that?
I'd agree with that. And even looking at I guess, the left bottom property, it's got a similar parcel shape as the subject.
Okay, right.
So,
Thank you for
yeah.
that. So now, would you agree, because there's a shared approach here, and there's also shared lands within the subject, as you can see, and I'm referencing that aerial photograph on page 4 again, the bottom photograph. Would you agree that a portion of the subject property, a rather large portion, is being used as an approach to the property right below the subject property?
I'm not quite sure I understood that.
Okay, if you look at the approach as it comes up the long slender piece, right, and to
Mm-hmm.
access there, you can see a road running along there, right, and then it curves into the property down below,
Okay, yeah.
right? So it does service that property, does it not?
Yeah, it does. And in the same way that the property below technically also services, because it seems to be functioning in conjunction with the four parcels. I don't think that takes away from the land value or the assessment just because it would need a road to function properly, and we can see that development isn't necessarily hindered due to having a road or a shared road. I think we would see this as a positive influence.
A positive influence for the subject?
Yes, having had a road in place.
Um, okay, I understand your thoughts on that. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I do understand now why there isn't a difference between the actual lot size and the designated assessed area for this parcel, according to your rationale. We do agree with your value, your square foot value. We feel it's fair, and I will address the assessable portion of this property in my presentation. Those are all the questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Seeland, do you have any questions for the assessor?
Yes, what would you say your best comparison is? Which property is your best comparable property?
I would say the best comparable property here would probably be comparable one because it's the most recent sale. It's got similar square footage to the subject's land area. And that being said, it's also influenced similarly in terms of the rail line with this subject.
Thank you. That's all. Any questions, Mr. Chair?
Ms. Duncan, any questions?
Yeah, just a couple on the comparables, just for my understanding. So comparable 1 in brackets below has the word small. Comparable 5 in brackets has the word large. What is that referencing in each of those comparables?
It's referencing the type of multifamily district zoning that it has. So the difference between them would be that comparable one being small would be permitted to develop, I guess, per whatever land ratio is in place at a smaller unit density than that of the comparable 5 RMFL large would. And comparables 2, 3, and 4 being RMU would be able to be developed to I believe at a higher density than that of the RMFL as well.
Okay, so the subject property is considered higher density. It's not considered small or large.
Well, it's RMFM medium, right? So it falls in between the small and large.
right. And then mixed use. What beyond the use of multifamily residential would mixed use provide? What else could
Mixed use would also be able to offer commercial components within the development, I believe.
Right, so those would have more options as far as what you could do with that land. That would be seen as favorable because then you have more options, correct?
They're all high density multifamily zoned properties. I'm not too sure on the specifics.
But for comparable 2, 3, and 4, you could do more than just that, correct?
Correct. You'd be able to develop a commercial portion,
Okay.
I believe.
Okay, and then just in regards to the photos and the other those other properties, is there any caveats that you're aware of in place that would be a hindrance or maybe a help? I don't know, but any caveats that exist?
None that I'm aware of.
Okay, and then the parameters within the lines. So that approach actually belongs to the subject property. It doesn't belong to those other 2 properties that are using it.
This for the aerial photos of subject?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess the lower bottom half page on my page 4 would show the purple outline that's highlighted, and that is the parcel shape.
Right. So who owns that road that goes into the subject property from Paget? Who would own that? The subject property
The
or?
subject property would, so Regal Villas Limited.
Right. So, and there's no caveats for those other properties having access to that land.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, that's it for my questions. Thank you.
If I
Are
can have, sorry, Mr. Chairman, if I can request clarification with respect to what the assessor has said, with respect to caveats, please.
Okay, go ahead.
The question was asked, are there any caveats registered against the property? Wouldn't you expect the caveats to be registered against the property allowing egress and ingress over it for the other roll numbers? They're standalone roll numbers and different ownerships. You just don't have the right to transverse over someone's property without the allowance to do that. Would you expect caveats to be registered?
I'm not sure. That's not something I've looked into.
Okay, fair enough. So that's all questions I have, and redirect.
Okay, thanks. All of your comparables here on the photos, they seem to have buildings on them. So when these sales, not all of them, I guess one of them didn't, but anyways, so with these sales, were they when the purchaser, were they already slated to build something on them?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, they weren't just buying vacant
Some
land.
of my comparables are dated, so I guess me taking a recent aerial photograph, that's why they mostly would have a building on them.
Right. Yeah, I can't expect you to know that. That's fair enough. Sewer and water, does this subject property have sewer and water capability? Or
I
hooked
believe
up?
it does. I think the only influence affecting the subject would be the rail line.
So you're sure it has sewer and water hookup already?
Let me just check quickly. From Paget Street, it seems to have access to both sewer and water.
Okay. And the other lots would, of course, because they have buildings on them already.
Mm-hmm.
But at the time they were purchased, they did not. That when they were land.
For the neighboring
For the comparables, yeah.
comparables,
For the comparable, you got land influence. And you haven't put sewer and no sewer and water in any of those.
what do you mean?
Well, when they were purchased, did they have sewer and water capability?
Comparable one did not have sewer and water capability. The other four, so comparables 2 to 5, I would assume they did have sewer capabilities
You
and
assume
water.
that, okay, that's kind of what I was getting at. Uh, and the rail line is only comparable one has the rail line influence, correct?
Also comparable to,
Oh, yes, you're correct. Yeah. The sales history was purchased in 2009. Is that correct?
that's correct.
And it's still vacant today, of course.
Correct.
So that's okay. Now
And I'm
it's
just checking on the 2009 sale because I'm not too sure necessarily. Okay. Never mind. So yeah, 2009.
so it was purchased for 461, and now
Yeah, in 2009.
this is 15 or 14 years later, and it's worth 1, 2, 3, 4, almost 5 times as much. Then okay,
Mm-hmm.
okay, that's all my questions. Mr. McCubbin, you may begin your presentation.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Um, I would like to preface my presentation with this comment, and the comment is in regards to, I know the board has focused a lot with requesting information on the comparable sales. Mr. Chairman, we are not disputing the land rate of $18.53. We feel it's a fair land rate for this property. So in my presentation, I will show the board what the accessible area of this property should be. There are differences. Not all lands on a property are accessible in all cases. There are cases where you have an actual lot size, and then you have a different number for the accessible lands for that lot size. So that will be the gist of my presentation here, Mr. Chair. So we go to my brief, file number 24-2942, roll number 10006447800. The property owner is Regal Villas Limited. The client is Crystal Developers Limited. The address is Paget Street, as you've heard, and the roll number we've stated. If you look at the site area as it stands is 105,218 square feet. And the accessible area I calculated to be 88,175 square feet. So that's the accessible area we'll be using to and applying the rate of $18.53, which we have no dispute about. So we'll be applying that rate to arrive at a market value for this property, and that market value, as it stands in April 1st, 2023, would have been 1,644,000 corrected. And I should correct my brief as I made some slight adjustments to my brief, Mr. Chairman. First and foremost, on page 2, if you look at the site area, if you can correct your area within the accessible area there, please, to 88,175. Just a minor change. And also, when you look at the requested assessment, it should be changed to 1,644,000 instead of 1,629. So slight increase in value.
Noted.
Pardon me?
Noted. Go ahead.
Thank you. Okay, so if I can get you to turn your attention to page 6 of my presentation, please. It shows an eagle's view, I guess, in the top photograph there, pretty high view of the area that the subject property sits in, and you can see it backs on the industrial and on the rail lines. And I must say that this portion of the property, Mr. Chairman, the back portion there, needs to be backfilled. It's not level, it's not prepared to be a building site at this point in time. The photograph down below, similar to the assessor's photograph, aerial photograph, in that it shows the configuration of the development on that corner, Sterling Line Parkway and Paget Street. And you can see that sliver coming up into the property from Paget Street. There are services coming right up to Paget Street. So upon development, the services will have to be drawn into the subject property at the back. But as you can see, as you move along that access point from Paget all the way, that slender piece of the subject property all the way in, you notice a road that's servicing the property below, and it's also servicing both properties below, I would say. So there's a good portion of the subject property that you can see it's of a different color brown on the map. You can see there's almost a delineation there running along the road. Which is accessing the property below the subject property. So that would be the buildable portion of this property, and that would be that would contain the accessible area of the subject property. Because of the shared use of the driveway coming in from Paget Street to service all the properties, and also because of the configuration of the back with respect to the roadway coming in and looping into the property down below, there's that portion that will be taken out. Not taken out totally, but it would be shared. So, so with respect to the accessible, and I should mention, Mr. Chairman, the properties that are below the subject property, you can see the development there. They're all done by the income approach to value. So that value includes land value also. It would also include the ability to egress and ingress off of the subject property. That value would include that. And so with that, the property at the corner of Paget and Sterling Line Parkway also. Now, with respect to calculating the accessible area, let's first go to page 7 of my presentation, please. The subject property is 2.4 acre parcel located west of Paget Street, north of Sterling Line Parkway. The parcel is located beside a Manitoba Hydro corridor and next to the CP rail. So not only does it back onto the CP rail line, there's a hydro corridor that runs at the back of the property too. The surrounding properties are a mix of multi-residential and light industrial uses. As I've said, across the railway tracks, there were industrial uses behind the subject property, not your best view, so to speak, for a residential property. A calculation of the area that is shared lands for this roll number and 90 Paget Street is indicated in the map below. And an area of 14,728, or it should be 14,729 feet should be assigned as accessible to the subject. So how do I get to that? If you look at the map below that paragraph, Mr. Chairman, you can see the area that I alluded to that's being shared with the property below that sits on the subject lands is highlighted in yellow. And that area is calculated at 29,457 square feet for that polygon. With respect to that area, because it's shared between both properties, the subject property and the property below, which already is accounted for in its income approach, that shared portion is already included in the income approach to value for the property below. That 29,000 divided by 2 equals 14,728. So that's for that portion of the back. So only of that 29,457 square feet, only 14,728 should be accessible to the subject property, used as accessible lands in calculating the assessed value. Going down to my paragraph below, the shared approach to subject property is 9.7 feet by 318 feet. So that's a shared approach. And that approach is shared by all the properties in that quadrant there. 4 properties, including the one at the front, the vacant piece with some storage, looks like storage trailers on it. So that approach, the size of that approach, Mr. Chairman, is 3,085 square feet. And you can see the calculation there. An area of 3/4 of the approach, equaling 2,314 square feet should be deducted from the total land area. So then the total deducted area, Mr. Chairman, becomes 17,043 square feet. The total area to be deducted, from the subject lands for assessment purposes should be 17,043 square feet. And you can see that calculation is based on 14,729 square feet plus 2,314 square feet in total. So the accessible area, and that's a typo there. It should be the accessible area of the subject property is therefore 105,218 square feet minus 17,043 square feet equals 88,175 square feet of accessible lands for the subject property. The highest and best use for subject property is future development into multifamily development. I'm not sure when that's going to take, when that will be taking place. I suspect the property in front will be built first, but I'm not sure what the development horizon is. So going down to the
Can I just stop you for a second? And Beth, I think I might speak for the other panel members. If you can go through these numbers one more time, how you got your 88,175. So it was
Absolutely.
29,457 was the shared area.
Was a shared area between just the, and I'm designating that I'm not splitting off into three because it's just a shared area between the two rear port properties there, the one that's developed and the subject property. So yes, that's 29,457. So I've divided that by two because it's shared, and I arrived at 14,728. That should be accessible to the subject property or should be taken away from that portion. Either way you look at it, designated assessed lands for that portion to the subject property should only be 14,728 square feet.
Right. And then the shared approach.
Pardon me?
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead again. Yeah, I won't interrupt you.
So the shared approach, going below the far part, before that photograph, Mr. Chairman, on page 7 of my brief, in that paragraph, the shared approach to the subject property is 9.7 feet times 318 feet from Paget Street, which equals 3,085 square feet. This shared approach, it services all the properties in that quadrant there, so to speak. So only 1/4 should be assigned to the subject property as accessible area, and 1/4 of that is the difference between 3,085 and 2,314 square feet. Okay, so moving on, the total area to be deducted is therefore 17,043 square feet. Okay, and that's the total area to be deducted from the actual area of the property to arrive at an accessible area for the property. And this has been done many times in the past, Mr. Chairman. This is nothing new. So
that's 6,264. That's misprint then.
That's a misprint. Sorry. Yeah, I neglected to. Yeah, when you multiply 9.7 by 318, it does not equal that. So
what did you get? What should that number be?
it should be 3,085 square feet. So it should read that sentence there. It should read the shared approach to subject property 9 point in brackets parentheses 9.7 feet times 318 feet from Paget Street. It's 3,085 square feet. Okay.
You divided that by 4, you said?
Divided by 4 to assign an area to the subject property that's accessible.
And what is that number? 3,085 divided by 4 is what?
Just bear with me. I should be able to do mental math, but it's not happening today. 3,030,85. So 3,085. 771 feet rounded.
So then we're adding that to the 14,728 to get our deducted area.
Say that again, please.
So you have your 771 square feet of the shared approaches to be applied to the subject property.
Yes.
Added to the 14,728.
Yes. It's rather confusing because the numbers are interchangeable, and it's important that we get this. Yeah, add in, add out, 6 of this, half a dozen of that. The main gist of the situation, if you follow my calculations, Mr. Chairman, So down below, you'll see the total area to be deducted is therefore 17,043 square feet, and to be deducted from the subject property. And that's arrived at by, as you can see, the calculation of 29,457 divided by 2 is 14,728. And the calculation to be deducted would be 3/4 of that approach, 3/4 of 3,085, which is 2,314 square feet. Does that make sense? Okay.
All right, yeah.
So the assessable area of the subject property is therefore 105,218 square feet, minus a total of 17,043 square feet. That's calculated above. So the assessable area of the subject property should be in fact 88,175 square feet. And this is not a new method. It's a tried and true method, and there's logic, and I've provided the logic behind that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, yeah.
So when you go to page 11 of my presentation, the City of Winnipeg Assessment and Taxation Department has assessed the subject property at $18.65 per square foot. We are in agreement with the rate used for this property. However, the assessable area should be adjusted to, and that should be corrected also, Mr. Chairman, to the 88,175. Okay. And then moving along, taking into consideration the neighboring properties' use of the subject's area, the value of the subject property, the vacant land value of the subject property as of April the 1st, 2024 is calculated as follows. So that should now read 88,175 square feet at $18.65 a square foot. And that gives us a value of $1,644,000 rounded. So in summary, based on the above analysis, the market value of the subject property as of April the 1st, 2023, reference date, should read $1,644,000. And the 2025 realty assessment should not exceed $1,644,000. And going down into my addenda.
Again, if I could just stop you one more time there. So I have the city at 1853 a square foot. Is that correct, Madam Assessor?
That's correct.
Okay. And I will have to correct that. I'm not sure. I apologize, Mr. Chairman. Just bear with me, please. I should have noticed that. So the new value, Mr. Chairman, should be 1,634,000 rounded. Slightly lower, $10,000 lower than. Yes. Thank you for picking up on that, Mr. Chairman. Moving into my addenda, you can see the registered owner of the property. On page 14, you can see on page 15, in the addendum, you can see the actual assessed value of the property, 2025 assessment roll. And that is my presentation, and I'm open to questions, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. A. Darkanova, do you have any questions for the applicant?
No questions, thanks.
Ms. Duncan, any questions?
Yes, so to your page 7 and the aerial photo, and the discussion has been around the within the yellow lined box as a shared use of property for access. That property is still owned by the current vendor owner of the subject property, correct? Shared or not, who owns that property in your opinion?
Yes, that is tied into the owner of the subject property, also property below.
Okay, so unless there was a caveat that disadvantaged the owner, that property is still theirs to use. The disadvantaged properties are the ones to the south who should not be using property that they don't own unless there's an existing caveat.
There would be an existing caveat on registration.
But we don't have that in any evidence.
We don't have that in any evidence, and I'm on the road here, Mr. Chairman. This is not a complicating matter. We've dealt with this many times in the past, Mr. Chairman. It's all about accessible area versus actual area. It does not matter who owns the property. There are two standalone certificate of titles, two different certificate of titles on these properties, and the property below is valued by the income approach to value. It includes the value of that approach. If it did not have access to its property from the subject property, it would not exist. You would not be able to get to that property. So it's not a new argument.
So is there two titles within the evidence and I maybe dismissed it? Are the titles reflected, both of them, in the evidence?
There are no titles that were submitted, Mr. Chairman, in evidence here. As far as I can see, neither the assessor nor I provided. In hindsight, maybe we should have provided the actual titles with the caveats.
Okay, and
for egress and ingress, you have to have that to access the property at the back.
so when I'm looking at the ingress and egress, I see there's two blue lines there. If you go back to Paget and take the line right to the back, that's the shape of the below building. It looks like without having to use that shared land, there would be access to that property on the bottom on the left. Do you agree based on the lines that are showing here?
Yes, it looks like a one-way situation. You come up through the subject property to access that property down below, and then you come through the bottom. Yeah, kind of like a turnaround. Yeah.
Okay, no further questions. Thank you.
So if a buyer wanted to buy this lot and build a structure on it, he would have to, you're saying that buyer, he or she would have to cede that area to the neighboring properties and could not build anything on this.
Cede it, we would share that area, Mr. Chairman.
Well, obviously they couldn't build anything on there if
no, it's not buildable within that the yellow outlined area is not a buildable site. The buildable site is above that. It's even smaller than the property down below. Yes.
But the owner must have some documentation, title or whatever documentation that states actually would have to state that no, you cannot build anything on this shared area. Not the case.
Yes, I imagine they would. Yes. I in hindsight, I should have provided those caveats in the actual legal description of property itself. But it's not, neither the assessor, I provided it.
Okay, I'm just going to break with the protocol a little bit here and direct my question again to the assessor.
Okay.
So Ms. Adar Canova, you are 100% sure that that you did not just discover any caveat or easement like that, or any document that would prevent a buyer from building on that area?
I did not look into that.
Did not look into it?
I did not. But I'm under the impression that the square footage we're using for the land area of 105,218 square feet is in fact the accessible area, as we don't see the driveway being a negative in terms of access that's already in place for the subject.
I have no further questions then. Anything in the summation, Ms. Adar Canova?
Sir, Mr.
No
Chair,
thanks.
I've been asked any questions here.
Okay.
So my question of the applicant is, this property to the south, is this property to the south paying a portion of the taxes for the shared component?
Can you repeat that question, please?
Sure, the property to the south of the subject property, are they paying a portion of the taxes for the shared?
In actual fact, they are. That's a good question, Mr. Chairman. In actual fact, they are, by the assessed value and the way that property is assessed. It is assessed by the income approach to value. It includes that shared portion in that assessment, so it ought not to be assessed at the subject property. That property would not be assessed by the income approach, and it wouldn't have access if it didn't have that shared approach there. So in conclusion, with respect to the income approach to value, yes, that piece, it's being doubly assessed, Mr. Chairman, essentially.
Mr. Applicant, do you represent that property too?
Pardon me?
Do you actually represent that property too?
I represent the clients. Our client is the owner of that property too, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, this would be directed to the assessor.
Yes, go ahead. I'm sorry, I missed you the first time there, Mr. Seelan. Sorry about that.
For the assessor, are you aware that the property to the south is paying a portion of the taxes on this portion of the property?
I'm not familiar with that, no.
That's all my questions, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, I have one more then.
Sure, go ahead, Ms. Duncan.
So to the applicant, just to make sure I'm clear in my mind, if that shared area was not there, even though it looks like there's an egress and ingress ability, just with some formation obviously on the bottom side, you're saying the back property was not accessible?
It would be accessible, but the configuration of development would have to be different. That T, as you see, may have to be reversed. You would need a lot more room to get into the back portion of that developed property.
Yeah, because again, as I'm looking at the picture, which is all I have to necessarily go by, because we obviously don't have measurements of the property below. It appears that from Paget, if you continue to follow the bottom road, the bottom blue line, all the way back of the property, that property is accessible without having to use that shared. It's just based on the nature of someone throwing in a roundabout road on property that they don't own from the looks of it.
With respect to access to that developed property at the back, yes, of course, they can get in without transversing over the subject property, but that was not the development configuration. And if you wanted to build the property that's on there right now, this is the configuration, and it's a shared area, and and that value of that shared area is already included in the income approach to value attained by the property below. It's already included in that value in the income approach. So it's double counting that value into the subject property.
But how do we know that shared land was already calculated into that developed property on the south? How do we know that? How do we know the square footage of that income approach to that property?
Sorry, I don't understand the question.
So the income approach was utilized to value the property below the subject property you've mentioned. How do you know what square footage was utilized in that income approach?
You don't necessarily have to know. You're valuing the property as it exists today with the access points. And as I've said, it's inclusive. There's no, for example, if I can give you an example, we have a property, say an apartment block on one roll number, and we have parking for the apartment block situated right next door on a different roll number, but vacant land and accessible and assessed, say 100,000. Now that's assessed by the cost approach to value. Direct comparison approach to value. The example that I'm giving you, that the parking lot, and now the developed property that's used that parking lot is done by the income approach to value. And what must be done in that sense, and it's done in all cases, you remove the value totally from the vacant land. The vacant land value of 100,000 is removed from the income approach. When you arrive at the income approach to value for the example I'm giving you, you remove $100,000 from it.
Again, though, there would have been agreements in place. There would have been something. Otherwise, and again, I'm just from my own perspective trying to understand this. If someone 40 years ago had this land and was using property that they actually don't own, that would just continue to exist. I can't see that. It's obvious unless there's a caveat, or like you say, different titles that exist, then you can see tangibly that so sad you're obligated to share your land with this other person. And in due diligence, when you bought it, you should have checked that out, type of thing. Not just because it's there that now forever going forward, someone's disadvantaged when they purchase land.
Oh no, and that's what the lawyers are there for. I mean, when they look at the titles of these properties, I mean, you're buying a property, yeah, you should be well aware of what comes with that property, what restrictions come with that property, and you should realize that you won't be building in that portion because you're sharing that portion with the property down below, whether there's a monetary exchange or a goodwill exchange, whatever you may, it's a shared approach.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I just have one more question. So looking at the picture again on page 7, you have that complex you call the T-shaped there. That's the neighboring property.
Yes.
Now the shadow cast by the photo makes it look like that building is infringing on the road there, but it actually is not, right? So there's that road, to use that building and access that parking area, you do have an approach existing that would not require you to go into that trapezoidal area that you have there in yellow.
Yes.
Would you agree with that?
Not necessarily. I would agree with that, with this one caveat, Mr. Chairman. The development would most likely not be as it exists today. It would be smaller. It may be a different configuration, because when you look at that loop on the subject property coming around on the subject property, it goes behind that property, and the parking is behind there too. So there would be congestion issues, I suspect, egress and ingress issues, getting out of that parking lot for the property that's developed there. Yeah, yes, of course they can have that access, but the development wouldn't be as it is today. And the value of that property, Mr. Chairman, would not be as it is today.
The value of the
Of the property by the income approach,
yeah, by the neighboring property.
you know?
Okay, but then if something was built there, then it would be a different situation, have to be reassessed on that basis then.
Yeah, if the configuration was different, we wouldn't be having this argument. If the configuration of development of that rear portion was different, and they had access through that slender area there, that trapezoid, that area, basically, that's outlined in yellow.
Okay.
We wouldn't be having this discussion.
Okay, fair enough. Anything in summation, Ms. A. Darkenova?
Sorry, just a question.
Oh, sorry.
Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
So I'm looking at the picture on page 7. This picture seems to have a shadow from the rooftop here, but the roadway actually extends and runs and looks like perhaps a bit of a parking lot and runs right through and gives you access to both points on that. I'll say southwestern property. Is that not true here? This is really just a shadow covering a portion of the road.
I think you answered that question already, Mr. Seeler. Yeah, I just asked that question.
Actually, I just wanted to make sure I had clarification, Mr. Chair.
Okay,
Yes.
go ahead and answer the question.
Yes, that is, it appears to be a shadow.
Thank you.
But you can see, if you look within that shadow, Mr. Chairman, you can see a roadway in there. Yes, you can see not a roadway necessarily, but a turning around area or an access into that building from there. So to avoid congestion, I suspect this is how they configured the development and access to the property. So to avoid congestion when coming down that narrow sliver.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Anything in summation, Ms. A. Darkenova?
No, thank you.
Anything in summation, Mr. McCubbin?
No, thank you. I think the board is now, I hope the board is clear on why there's a difference between the assessable lands and the actual square footage of the land.
Okay. That then concludes this item number 4. File number 24-2942, Paget Street. And thank you, Mr. McCubbin. I guess you're done for the day, right?
Well done with this for today.
That.
Yeah. Hopefully.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you very much. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Okay, we will proceed to item number 7, 3640 Ferrier. Is the applicant available and is there a submission, Ms. Graywood?
They did not provide a brief or registered. We have no one in attendance.
Okay, then we will go into recess and the board will consider if we will hear this property or not. We are back in order and the board has deliberated on hearing item number 7, 3640 Ferrier Street in the applicant's absence, and we have determined that we will hear the property. So you may begin your presentation, Ms. A. Darkenova.
Sounds good. File number 24-260. Roll number 050094333615. Owner is 100438894 Manitoba Limited. This is roll year 2025 with the reference date of April 1st, 2023. The assessed value is $2,147,000. This is residential 2, taxable. Property type is vacant residential high density, and it is zoned RMFM with a land area of 186,007 square feet. Continuing to page 2, we can see that it's within the Old Kildonan neighborhood, and it's influenced by an external corner and light traffic. The land valuation is at a net rate of $11.54 per square foot. Continuing to page 3, we have the land sale comparables. So they are all pucked VRES 2, and we see a mixture of the multifamily district zoning ranging between RMFM, same as subject, to RMFL, RMFS. So starting with comparable 1, it's within the Layla North neighborhood. It has a land area of 157,398 square feet. Land influences that this experiences is commercial adjacent and no sewer, no water. Has a sale date of November 23rd, 2020, and a sale price per square foot of $19.06. Comparable 2 is also within the Layla North neighborhood. It has a land area of 196,337 square feet, zoned RMFL. Experiences light traffic, similar to subject, and external corner hydro lines. The date of sale is August 4th, 2021, making this the most recent sale with a sale price per square foot of $26.49. Comparable 3 is within the North Inkster industrial neighborhood. It has a land area of 180,242 square feet, zoned same as subject RMFM. Experiences light traffic, same as subject. And it has a date of sale being October 2nd, 2018, with a sale price per square foot of $13.21. Comparable 4 is within the West Kildonan industrial neighborhood. It has a land area of 165,670 square feet, zoned RMFL, experiences in external corners, same as subject, and it has a date of sale of October 24th, 2018, and a sale price per square foot of $16.90. Comparable 5 is Amber Trail in the Amber Trails neighborhood. Has a land area of 177,353 square feet. It's zoned RMFS, experiences medium traffic, and the external corner that's common with the subject has a dated sale of November 6, 2013, with a sale price per square foot being $10.33. So I feel that it's well within reason for our net rate per square foot to be at $11.54 for the subject. And continuing to page 4, we can see the subject property and aerial view on the corner of Fernbank Avenue and Ferrier Street. And immediately following, there's comparable 1, and we can see that it's also, in a sense, in a similar development surrounded by some undeveloped parcels and developed parcels that the subject experienced as well. And on page 5, again, comparable 2, we can see on the top, comparable 3 on the bottom. Continuing to page 6, we have comparable 4 and comparable 5. And then we have the Municipal Assessment Act excerpts continuing on pages 7 and 8. Thank you for listening to my presentation.
Thank you. Ms. Duncan, any questions for the assessor?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Seelan, any questions?
Yes, what would you say best comparison is for comparable walls?
I would say the best comparable for this one would be I think it would have to be comparable one, as that's the second most recent sale and it's zoned RMFM as well.
Thank you. That's all. Thank questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. On page 4, subject property. What's on there right now? Is it parking or something? Or it looks like there's structures on there.
Yeah, let me just try to zoom in on my brief. It's unhappy with that right now. Okay. So it looks like there is multifamily development in place already. Does seem that there's space for parking, but on the corner of Ferrier Street and Fernbank Avenue, the L shape that you see there with the black, what looks to be a roof, would be a building, and then we can see that running along, that's, I guess, Ferrier Street side of the parcel, there's a wooden structure as well that doesn't seem to have a roof.
But this is being assessed as vacant land.
Currently, at the moment, yes.
Or are these structures then built after the reference date? Is that the situation?
I have not looked too much into that. It could be that they're not complete yet because I guess development has a 2-year period before they have to be, if they're not yet finished already, before they get put onto the roll.
Okay. I have no further questions. Anything in summation?
No thanks.
Then we'll complete item number 7, 3640 Ferrier Street. And we have heard all of the items scheduled, and this hearing is now adjourned. Thank you very much, Ms. A. Darkenova, for your presentation.
Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.